Welcome back, and this week's video deals with the Clyde Track Layer and the HO diorama in the Lake Superior Railroad Museum dedicated to this interesting machine. Clyde Iron Works in Duluth, Minnesota was once a major builder of industrial equipment, from large cranes and hoists to the Clyde Track Layer we will see in this video. The track layer was designed by Duluth resident John McGiffert along with the McGiffert log loader. In the railroad logging business, spur tracks were laid down, an area was logged, and then the tracks were taken up and laid again in a new area. With 2,500 ties per mile and 40 to 50 tons of rail, a more efficient way was needed to achieve this. With the track layer and a good supply of materials, a crew could do about a quarter mile a day. The idea for this project came about one day when one of our longtime members came up to me and asked if we had a use for a Clyde track layer. Well, having worked at Clyde Iron for many years, I was familiar with what these were, and it took me about 3 seconds to say yes. So I got together with one of the other members and we decided we would build a diorama for this. And he started on the base and did the groundwork and laid the track, and I was at home where I started to make trees. I figured about 14 should do it for the space we had to work with. I figured that would keep my mind off of that spindly little brass thing in the box that kept staring at me every time I looked at it. I was afraid to even take it out of the box because it looked like it was going to break if I just sneezed on it. Well, after more time than I care to admit to, I finally got the courage to take it out of the box and take a stab at painting it. And it terrified me because I knew I was going to have to take the thread off the cables off the drums that allowed the hoist to go back and forth and up and down. And you would think that somebody who worked on cranes for a living would know how to do that, but this project was just flat out intimidating. As luck would have it, the paint jobs turned out okay, so I was happy with that. Now, the way this all works is that steam is fed from the locomotive at the rear, along the cars in between, and up to the hoist on the track layer. The two cars between the locomotive and the track layer hold the ties and the rails. And what happens is they will pick up a bundle of ties by running the trolley on the boom all the way back to that car and take the bundle and bring it forward, dropping it down so the workers can gather up the ties and lay them out. The trolley will then go back and pick up rail and have that waiting, so when the ties are laid, they can drop the rail down and the workers will align them and spike them in place. The engine can then move ahead and begin the process all over again. Sometimes, but not always, there could be a boxcar on the end of the train that may be carrying extra needed supplies such as tools. Next, of course, we have the steam engine that was responsible for moving the track layer itself and also providing the steam that operates the winch on top. Next, we see the flat car that contains the ties, and alongside you can see the steam line that runs to the track layer. Next, we see the flat car that contains the rails, and right above it, the boom that extends from the track layer, where the trolley can ride back and forth to pick up whatever the workers will need next. Finally, we get to the track layer itself. You can see behind it the flat car with the rails on it. They would also store rails on the deck of the track layer, and you can notice the steam line running up alongside the ladder to the winches. This photo was taken right after I had finished painting it, and you will notice that there is not a steam line on the side of this. Apparently the manufacturer didn't think anybody would actually want to use these and just look at them on a shelf instead. So that left it up to me to bend one up and add one. I didn't think it would look right to have a diorama with all of this in it and not at least show how the things actually operated. I want to go a little into the scenery, and as you can see in this picture on the upper right, I started filling in with some brush just to hide the transition from the ground to the backdrop, but I wasn't happy with that, so I started taking it out. And what I ended up doing was taking ready-made pine trees and taking a scissors and cutting off the backside so that it was flat, and then I planted these right flat against the backdrop, and I kind of like that effect better because it was also dark underneath the lower branches and hid everything underneath there. The diorama is only 18 inches wide from the front edge to the backdrop, which didn't leave me a lot of room to put in the tall pine trees, one of which you can see is in the early stages there. First, I must apologize because I cannot remember who made this or what it's called, but it's an excellent ground cover for the area that I was going to use it underneath where the trees will be going. After picking out the loose pieces between the rails, I gave this area a few applications of matte medium to hold it all together. So now it was time for trees. I liked the way they looked, but when I commented that there is something missing, and I couldn't put my finger on it, and then it hit me. Dead pine needles. We need dead pine needles. And this is where the guys all said, don't do any more. It looks fine the way it is. You're going to ruin it if you keep adding stuff. Well, I heard their words, and I thought about it for 5 seconds or so, and I thought, the heck with you guys, I've got an idea. Well, being a scrounger as well as a machinist, when I would find a coolant tray on a grinder that was completely empty, I would scrape the rust out of it thinking this could be handy for weathering or something later on. So I dug out my little box of rust and I mixed it with some static grass and got what I figure is a good enough match for dead pine needles. Using the modified pea shooter from the previous photograph, this is how I applied the pine needles a little at a time. I liked the way it turned out, and the rest of the guys liked it also. And it also seems to increase the shadiness below the trees, and that doesn't hurt either. Sitting now with natural sunlight coming through the skylight of the Lake Superior Railroad Museum, it now resides in its permanent resting place. Feel free to enjoy the last few pictures without any more noise from me. Thanks for looking at my video. And please do like and subscribe.